Hello and welcome back to another video. So today I wanted to talk about the Democrats' population problem going into the 2030 census. Now, as you all know, in the United States, we have a census every 10 years, with the last one being in 2020 and the next one being in 2030. And after each census, the number of U.S. House seats for each state is reapportioned based off of that state's population. Now, going into the 2030 census, we have a few trends that do not look good for Democrats whatsoever. So I wanted to talk about that today and how Democrats can potentially address that issue. So back in December, the Brennan Center released this. It's a projected 2030 congressional reapportionment, and it highlighted some pretty interesting things. So, of the states that are projected to gain electoral votes in 2030, and obviously these are just House seats, they don't include the 2 extra electoral votes you get from the Senate seats. So Texas would get 42 House seats, but 44 electoral votes, for example. But like I was saying, of the states that are projected to gain electoral votes in 2032, which would be the first presidential election under the new maps, all of those states, they voted for Donald Trump. However, of the states that are projected to lose electoral votes, only 2 voted for Trump and the rest voted for Harris. So if we take a look at these individual states, we'll see that Texas, it's projected to gain 4 seats. Florida, projected to gain 4 seats. These are reliably Republican states at the moment, and they most likely will be in 2032. Now, obviously, that's a long time away, so we can't know for sure. But for right now, they're pretty reliably red states. And between just these 2 states, Republicans are gaining 8 electoral votes. North Carolina, always a close state, but it hasn't voted for a Democrat for president since Barack Obama in 2008. It voted for Trump by 3 points. They're gaining an electoral vote. Arizona went for Joe Biden by about 0.3% back in 2020, but it voted for Trump by over 5 points in 2024. They're gaining an electoral vote. Utah, safe red state, gaining an electoral vote. Same story here in Idaho. Now, looking to the states that are losing electoral votes, California, they are losing 4 electoral votes. That's huge. At this rate, Texas is going to surpass California after the 2040 census. Now, obviously, things can definitely change from now and then. I mean, that's 15 years from now, but this is not a good look for the Democrats. In Oregon, this is a state that Kamala Harris won pretty easily. They're losing an electoral vote. New York, safe blue state, they're losing 2 electoral votes. Rhode Island is losing an electoral vote, safe blue state. Illinois, same story, they're losing 1. Minnesota went to Harris by 3 points, Biden by 7. They're losing an electoral vote. Now, Pennsylvania and Wisconsin are each losing an electoral vote. However, they did vote for Trump in 2024 and in 2016, but they did both vote for Biden in 2020. And those, I think, will continue to remain pretty competitive states, along with Arizona and North Carolina, even though Arizona did revert a bit towards the Republican Party. Now, if we take a look back at the 2024 election, we see that Trump won with 312 electoral votes. Harris got 226. Now, I applied the 2024 map, but I applied this new electoral map with the updated congressional seats. And what this shows us is that instead of getting 312 votes, Trump would get 322. Instead of getting 226 votes, Harris would get 216. So the Democrats would lose 10 and the Republicans would gain 10. So why is this important? Because it makes it a lot more difficult for the Democrats to get to 270 electoral votes, which is the magic number that you need to become president. And to give a specific example, if in 2024 Kamala Harris had won Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, that would have gotten her to exactly 270 electoral votes, and she'd be president right now. However, under these new electoral vote counts, she would only get to 258 electoral votes, and Trump would still win. So even if Democrats, win the Rust Belt, Trump would still win. So they can't just rely on these 3 states anymore. They'd have to, even just winning Nevada would not get them to 270. They would need either Arizona, which would get them to 270, or Georgia would get them to 274, or North Carolina would get them to 275. Now, if these Rust Belt states begin to shift away from the Democrats, then they need to embrace a Sun Belt strategy. So Georgia, Nevada, North Carolina, and Arizona, but here they only get to 267 electoral votes. So they would still need to win at least one of these 3 states. Now, obviously, 2032, that's 7 years away from now, so the electoral map can definitely shift around a lot from now, and states that might be considered safe states at the moment might start to become pretty competitive in 2032. So, if the Democrats were to win Texas, they could lose Arizona, they could lose Nevada, they could lose Georgia, and they would need North Carolina, but they could lose these 3 states. They could lose pretty much every swing state from 2024 except for North Carolina, and they would still win. Or they could lose North Carolina and they could get Arizona, and that would put them at 272. If the Democrats won Texas and they won Wisconsin, 269 tie scenario, election goes to the House, which would probably favor the Republicans. So a lot of different scenarios that you can work out, but the point remains the same. The task for Democrats to get to 270 electoral votes becomes more difficult due to the fact that people are moving to red states, and a lot of people are moving away from blue states. New York, a lot of people have left. California, a lot of people have left. Texas and Florida have seen huge growth in population. Same with states like Arizona and North Carolina as well. And then the Midwest in general, red state or blue, they've been bleeding voters. And if we go back here to the Brennan Center, as you can see, they've split it up by region. The South has been gaining a lot of congressional seats over the past several decades, and the South traditionally tends to be more conservative. So this helps the Republican Party. The Northeast tends to be more liberal. This hurts the Democrats. They've gone from 117 in the 1960s to 81 to be projected in the 2030s. That's horrible. Just from 2020 to 2030, Republicans gained, or not Republicans, but the South gained 9 seats. The Northeast loses 4. The Midwest and Plains region, they lose 3. They used to be at 125. Now the Midwest, again, it's more split between the Democrats and the Republicans, so that could hurt or help either party. The Mountain West tends to be more Republican. They've gained more seats, and the West tends to be more Democratic. They've begun to lose seats. So clearly the numbers here do not help the Democrats at all. And now one way that the Democrats could at least try and put a Band-Aid on this bleeding of voters is to build more housing. What red states have been doing is they've continued to build more housing, which has reduced the cost of housing, made housing more affordable, so more people are moving to those states. And a lot of blue states, they refuse to build housing. They have very arduous processes to build more housing with a lot of regulations that need to be met. And as a result, less housing is built. We've got higher housing costs, a high cost of living, and people are moving out of these blue states. So blue states, if Democrats want to address this issue, they need to start immediately by building more housing, because the 2030 census, it's in 5 years, and they don't have as much time as they might think. So if you guys enjoyed today's video, please be sure to drop a like, subscribe, turn on post notifications, and leave a comment down below, and I'll see you all in the next video.